Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. And Mom, we don't want to lie, we're going to be talking about marijuana today. Specifically, New Hampshire's elected officials going farther than they ever have to liberalize drug laws in the state. On Thursday, the New Hampshire Senate voted to decriminalize the possession of up to 3/4 of an ounce of marijuana. Joining us this morning to discuss, Senate Majority Leader Jeb Bradley and Representative Rennie Cushing of Hampton, of course, Senator Bradley of Wolfboro. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Of course, Senator Bradley, let's start with you. What changed for Republicans over the last few years here that brought enough support to pass this bill?
I think people have realized that, especially when they've had kids that may have gotten on the wrong side of having marijuana, that it could impact the future of their lives in a very harmful way, whether it's student loans, serving in the military, working for the government. And it does have a consequence. And so for a very small amount of marijuana, it could be a big penalty. And I think people have just realized that it's happening. It's time to make it a violation and not a misdemeanor offense. And so, you know, like a lot of other things, values change. And so I think we're seeing that happen.
And Representative Cushing, from the House perspective, this is something that's been ongoing for decades here. Give us a sense of the history on decriminalization.
Well, the first bill was introduced in 1976. One of the co-sponsors of this year's bill, Chuck Grassley, was the lead on that. I know when Jeb was in the House in 1997, there was a bill introduced to decriminalize marijuana, and it came out 18-0 to kill the bill, and the House went along with it. But over the past decade, you know, certainly the House has passed 7 times a bill to decriminalize it, and I think it's part of an evolving, you know, changing attitudes. We're not isolated. You know, we spend $35,000 a year to send somebody to prison, and the idea that we want to spend millions of dollars to prosecute people for possessing a small amount of marijuana at a time when we don't have enough money for beds for people with opioid addiction doesn't make much sense from a public policy perspective.
And Senator Bradley, you mentioned that young people in particular, it was the concern that sort of pushed this over the top for you and other Republicans. Obviously, there's the small amount argument, this demarcation at 3/4 of an ounce. How did we get there? Can you explain a little bit about the compromise that was there?
Well, as I said on the floor, compromise is really more art than science, and so that's just the number that was agreed to, if you will. And I want to make it clear that law enforcement didn't support the bill. What I was trying to do is find something that they could live with better. So an amount for edibles that would be a misdemeanor above that amount, a lesser amount than an ounce. If you had 4 violations within a 3-year period, the 4th violation could potentially be a misdemeanor, and then the juvenile delinquency issue. Those were all things that the Senate added, suggestions by law enforcement. And I credit Rennie for, you know, being willing to work on a compromise that I think the proponents of it get most of what they want, not all of what they want, but most of it, and I think that law enforcement can better live with the results.
And you know, Senator Bradley certainly played a leadership role in bringing the stakeholders to the table and sitting down, and it was really clear now that, you know, this week UNH poll came out, said that 2/3 of the people of the state of New Hampshire support decriminalization. That's more popular than the legislature itself. So what we saw this week is just the legislature getting in step with the rest of the whole state.
And of course, there is some small but vocal opposition on this issue. Let's take a listen to Senator William Gannon of Sandown during Thursday's floor debate.
I'm also worried with this bill. I'm worried about there's no way when we stop drivers who are going to be stoned, we don't have a good blood test. There's no breathalyzer to go to a .08. We're not going to know who, and the police aren't going to know who to stop and who to let go. And I don't want to be there when some family's wiped out by a stoned driver who a police officer let go with a violation.
Is that a valid argument, Senator Bradley?
Well, no, I think that the way this bill is structured, it doesn't do anything to change the impaired driving laws, nor should it. And it's interesting, I spoke with a police chief earlier about this, and my suggestion was, you know, where we should be able to work collaboratively to make sure our highways are safe is making sure we have the right impaired driving laws for marijuana. I think we've cracked down on drunk driving with alcohol. Certainly an awful lot of resources have been devoted to interdicting heroin dealers and fentanyl dealers, and I think that's where the focus should be, and not penalizing largely younger people who make one or two mistakes, if you will, with a lifetime of consequences. And I think that's what's changed. That's why it passed.
And everyone's opposed to impaired driving. That's clear. You know, and one of the things that we want to do is to work to make sure that we deal with drug use as a public health issue and a public safety issue, not just as a criminal justice matter.
The tangent to the young people argument is a lot of people argue that by decriminalizing, we're sending some kind of a message to young people that it's somehow more okay to do drugs. What do you say to that argument that essentially by opening this door, we might be sending some young people down the path toward addiction?
You know, I think that has some validity, I have to say, and you try to balance it against, you know, a lifetime worth of mistakes. So I think for some people, alcohol can be a gateway drug. I think for some people, marijuana can be a gateway drug. Certainly, we have seen through the whole debate about opioids and heroin and fentanyl that addiction to painkillers, legal painkillers used illegally, has caused huge problems. So I think you can't just make a blanket statement that marijuana is a gateway. For some, it probably is, but for others, like alcohol, it isn't. So let's not have people have a lifetime worth of consequences for possession of up to 3/4 of an ounce, as long as you're not constantly in violation of the statute. And I think that's what the compromise came down to.
Yeah, and there is some dissonance here. Obviously, Representative Cushing, is we have an entire culture built around alcohol,
Absolutely.
which is okay, and yet this other drug is viewed as taboo.
Right. I mean, you know, we put liquor stores on our interstate highways, and we rely on that for, you know, a substantial amount of our revenue. But one other thing that's happened that's changed is that Maine and Massachusetts and Canada and just this week Vermont have all moved toward legalizing the use of recreational marijuana by adults. We can't exist just as an island surrounded by places where where marijuana is used without trying to address the impact that's going to have on us.
And you've made the geographical argument. On the seacoast, you have 18 miles of a different law sandwiched by something different.
I go 10 miles north of my house. In Maine, people can buy marijuana, adults, legally. I go 10 miles south to Massachusetts, and it's that 18 miles of transit that we have to figure out how we're gonna respond to that.
Some see a similar trajectory here to what happened with gay marriage. First civil unions, then gay marriage in rapid succession from a legislative standpoint. Senator Bradley, do you see a corollary there? And are you concerned that suddenly now we're going to see a push towards legalization that will just move forward?
You know, it's hard to say what will happen in the future, so I'm not going to speculate, but I do think that there is evolving views from people. And I think if you look at the latest WMUR UNH polling, it shows that younger people, like your age, Adam, overwhelmingly support it, whereas people with white hair like me tend to be a little bit more reticent about it. And that means values are changing, and I think that's why a strong majority in the Senate this week voted to pass decrim when it's never happened before.
Representative Cushing, do you see, I mean, legalization is coming next? Is that?
I see that, but because I think the more apt analogy is the end of the prohibition of alcohol. And I think what we're moving toward is to treat marijuana the way that we do alcohol. That's to, regulate it, to tax it, to control it. Because as we saw with alcohol, that ended up being a failed social experiment. I think to a certain extent we realized that kind of the war on weed has turned out to be the same way, and that we're better off trying to put our resources into, to managing the problem, trying to suppress it.
And take us through where we go from here. It's back to House Criminal Justice, and then the full House.
So it's past the Senate now. It goes back to the House. I think Representative Cushing is on the committee that heard the bill in the House. So their choice is to either concur, which I think Rennie wants to do, or ask for a committee of conference. But I think more likely it's going to be concur, correct? And go to the governor.
The House will concur with the Senate bill, and it will go to the governor, and the governor will sign the bill. And we asked the governor on Thursday whether or not he would have a signing ceremony, kind of in jest perhaps, and he said, we'll see, very much in the way that you would say we'll see to, like as my son asks me for an excavator, he said, we'll see. That's the kind of we'll see that I give to my son. I just have to ask you, from a practical standpoint, this legislation becomes law, does it change your lives at all?
No.
Doesn't change my life.
No, I'm glad that the debate is over. I think we need to focus on the budget, making sure we meet the needs of the people in the state of New Hampshire with new mental health initiatives, adequate funding for heroin and fentanyl treatment. We're going to debate kindergarten. So we've got a big budget ahead of us. We need to protect taxpayers in that budget, but we also need to try to grow jobs. And so I am thrilled that the debate about marijuana is behind us, because the budget is a big issue for all of us.
I agree with Senator Bradley there.
We have concurrence. All right, gentlemen, Senator Bradley and Representative Cushing, we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's much appreciated.
Adam,
Thanks.
Adam.
Gentlemen. All right, and we